I look at an ecosystem from the standpoint of its functionality as consisting of three major groups of organisms. You have producers, consumers, and decomposers, right? So the producers then, what do? Produce what?
Food.
Food, exactly. And what are the producers?
Plants.
Green plants, exactly right. So the producer organisms then are what we're referring to when we say wetlands are the most productive natural communities. We mean that they have the capability of producing more biomass per unit of area than other natural community types. In other words, if you were to count the number of trees and the number of leaves and the number of or pounds of living material out there per unit of area, what's a square meter or a hectare or an acre or whatever, then wetland communities by type produce more of that than even unless you have agricultural fields that are heavily subsidized by fertilizer and irrigation and all that. Naturally, wetlands produce more food supply. Yeah.
So we don't gotta get no boots in there. Like.
Well, that's why we have that boardwalk out there. So you can walk right out in the middle of that pond without me having to find things like this to fit everybody. Okay. It's just not practical to have waders for everybody, and it would be an enormous problem to keep up with. I put them on so I can wade out there and find things for you guys and that sort of thing. But it's not necessary for you to have them.
So you going out there?
I will spend some time out there. Whatever we see, I'll make it.
Are we all going out there?
No.
Everybody's going to go on the water.
You got some boots like that? What's that?
Nobody's going to go out in the water but me. Okay? That's why I'll wear the boots, so I can get out there without.
Well, you know, see, this is like a big place where, you know, y'all don't do like no Halloween activities and stuff. Hey.
I don't do any Halloween activities out here, no, and I hope that I don't get vandalized any more this Halloween than I've already been vandalized. God knows I've been vandalized a lot. All right. Now, with that brief introduction, I didn't finish about diversity, and I need to do that because that's the other important aspect about wetlands. And who can tell me what I mean when I say diversity? What does diversity mean?
Different.
You got a lot of this stuff. Different.
And a lot of different kinds of animals and plants, okay? Exactly right. And so by saying it's the most diverse natural communities, that means there are more kinds of plants and animals in wetlands than you will find in other types of communities. That's particularly important this day and age because we're losing a great deal of our biodiversity. Biodiversity is one of the hot topics and perhaps the most significant issue facing our world in a longer term sense is the loss of biodiversity. Because whether people realize it or not, all these species out here growing and living with us among them are the things that make this earth a hospitable place for you and I. And losing biodiversity is very dangerous for the long-term welfare of human beings as well as all the other species on the planet. Because it is this network of living things on earth that keep us healthy and safe and keep our oxygen supply up, control and regulate climate, provide the food resources, 100 different things that you don't even have, perhaps nobody has knowledge of as to how important they are until you lose them. And then you find out, gee, that was really a bad thing to lose those things. We take a lot of things for granted, like cleaning the air, cleaning the water. We now spend a great deal of money cleaning the water just so you can have water to drink. That would not be so if our population were small enough to let nature do its own thing, which it always does. I'll show you how wetlands are useful in cleaning water supplies while we're out there. Okay? So does anybody have any questions about the importance of looking into what we're doing out here and why it's worth our time to go through this?
I have a question. What would happen if we were to lose the things that you were just talking about?
Lose wetlands or lose biodiversity? We don't know exactly at what point because of the complex interworking of things, but losing biodiversity is extremely dangerous because of how interlocking the natural food webs and living interactions are in nature. We don't know that if you lose this species, what it's going to do to all the other species. And the question you're asking is a key question that biologists and ecologists all over the world are asking. But right now, the complexity of living organisms interacting together is so great that we just can't answer that question. And we're getting to the point we're very afraid, for example, losing the tropical rainforests has got, now we understand, it is a significant player in the climate issues of the day, or what we call, global warming.
Right.
And that seems to be on several levels. One is that by cutting down the forest, we are putting a lot of carbon dioxide back in the air, but we are also changing the way that the solar energy coming in to the earth is intercepted and interacted with, and changing the amount of moisture that's coming out of the forest. You see, every tree out here in this forest, for example, is pumping, or I shouldn't say pumping, is moving something like 300 or 400 gallons of water on a hot summer day every day up to the top of those trees. About 90+%, about 99% really, of that amount of water going up in those trees gets evaporated and contributed to the atmosphere. On a terrestrial environment, that's extremely important. Out in the oceans, it comes straight off the surface of the water. But by having that moisture in the air, that ensures rainfall, right?
Right.
Well, in the tropical zone, if you cut all those trees down, then the water is not coming up and being put into the air, and the water that does rain down gets into the streams, is exported to the oceans and the seas, sometimes thousands of miles away. Consequently, what has been a tropical rainforest in some of the most productive area on earth becomes basically a desert. And the way that happens is very interesting, because the sun comes down and shines on the earth, and then heat transfer. You see, water is the great energy buffer that we have. And so when heat is exchanged by taking liquid water and turning it into a vapor, that requires 540 calories of energy per gram of water to do that and not change the temperature 1 degree. So as long as that tropical forest is in place, the sunlight shines down, it changes water from liquid to vapor, that rises in the air, cools as it rises, and rains back out over the rainforest and keeps that cycle going. When you cut the trees down, the heat exchange, instead of being what we call latent heat exchange, it becomes what's called sensible heat exchange or convection exchange, whereby the earth warms up now. Instead of being about 80, 85 degrees like it usually is in the tropics, sometimes 90, the temperature of the earth gets up to be 100, 120, 125, or 30 degrees, and that causes the air to rise so fast that it creates wind movement. And the wind movement begins to move all the fine particles of soil until the only thing remaining is sand. So the most hostile environments on earth in terms of heat and stuff exist in like the Sahara Desert. And if you look, there's a band around the world. So it's either these extremely hot, dry desert environments or the luscious, most tropical, most diverse natural communities that you have in the rainforest. And there seems to be little in between. So it's either, and that may well be that we look back in our ancient history enough that what is now the Sahara deserts out there may have once been rainforests that were destroyed many thousands of years ago that we don't even know about. Because when you look at it from up on the satellite, you can see this little trace of where there used to be stream patterns. So it's kind of an interesting thing to realize, and we don't even realize we're doing these things until it already happened. We could talk forever about that because I'm really excited about the topic, but I don't want you to get me sidetracked too much, because we do have a project to do out here. Okay, so let's take our stuff and take a walk and see what we can find going on out here in our wetlands.